There is a cheese in your fridge. Or there was. Or there will be. On the back of the label, in small print, it says pasteurized. That word is there because of a bacterium that gets into you through raw milk and undercooked meat and then goes for your spine. It is the most common animal to human disease on the planet right now, and the oldest body anybody thinks it may have got into is lying in a museum in Paris, and he has been famous for 100 years for something else entirely. In 1908, three priests digging in a cave in central France pulled out a Neanderthal skeleton, nearly complete, the first one anybody had. It went to Paris to an anatomist named Marcellin Boule, and what Boule published between 1911 and 1913 shaped the next 100 years of how people pictured a caveman. Stooped, bent-kneed, a big toe that stuck out sideways like a thumb. That is where the hunched grunting brute comes from. One man, one skeleton, one reconstruction. It took until 1957. Two anatomists, William Straus and Alec Cave, went back to the same bones and found that the posture Boule had drawn was not the species. It was one man's arthritis. He was over 60, his spine was wrecked. Boule had read the disease as the anatomy. And that is where the story usually stops. Brutish caveman, corrected, everyone move on. Hold on to that word though, arthritis, because in 2021, two researchers went back to the same bones a third time, and the arthritis is not what caught their eye. I'm going to tell you what they found. And then, near the end, I'm going to tell you why the last time somebody made this exact kind of claim about a hominin skeleton, they had to take it back. That part matters more than the finding does. Bruce Rothschild and Martin Hausler published the reassessment in Scientific Reports in October 2021. Hausler is at the Institute of Evolutionary Medicine in Zurich, and if the name is familiar, it is because he is the same man who took apart the diagnosis on the Turkana boy. What they were looking at was the pattern. Arthritis wears joints down where they rub. It is mechanical, and it turns up where you would expect it. The jaw, the shoulders, the elbows, the hips, all of that is there on this skeleton, and none of it is in dispute. But there is something else on those bones that arthritis does not do. Erosions. On the underside of the fifth and sixth bones of his neck, on the small joints between the fourth and fifth, and between the seventh and the first of the chest, on a bony wing sticking out sideways from that first chest vertebra, on both joints between the ninth and 10th, and on his left hip, reactive new bone spreading well beyond the joint itself, out across the bone where a joint problem has no business going. Scattered, non-contiguous is the word they use. Damage in one place, then a gap, then damage again somewhere unconnected. Wear does not skip. Infection does. Something in the blood, arriving at several places at once, eating into bone in each of them independently. And there are grooves on the back arches of his lower vertebrae of the kind left by granulomas, which are what a body builds around an infection it cannot clear. The organism they name is Brucella. It was described in 1885 by a doctor named David Bruce on Malta, which is why it spent decades being called Malta fever. It lives in animals, cattle, goats, sheep, pigs. It gets into people two ways, and both of them are ordinary. You drink the milk without heating it, or you butcher the animal and it goes in through your hands. That is the whole mechanism. It is the reason the word pasteurized is on the label. So look at what that does to the skeleton. For 100 years, this man was the evidence that Neanderthals were brutes. Then, for 60 more, he was the evidence that we had misread an old man's arthritis. If Rothschild and Hausler are right, the marks on his spine are neither. They are a record of what he ate. He butchered animals. He handled raw meat. He did the thing his whole species did to stay alive, and something came back through his hands and settled in his neck. The lesions that made him look primitive are evidence that he was doing exactly what a competent adult was supposed to do. Now, the thing I said I would come back to. Before this, the oldest claimed case of brucellosis in our family was a specimen called STW431, an Australopithecus from Sterkfontein in South Africa, somewhere over 2 million years old. And it does not stand up. Someone went back to the two damaged vertebrae in that spine, low down, the fourth and the fifth, and concluded the marks were more likely a limbus vertebra, which is a disc that pushed forward into the edge of the bone. The last time somebody read brucellosis into an ancient spine at those two bones, it turned out to be a slipped disc. The paper on La Chapelle knows this. Its own title has the word possible in it. Nobody has pulled brucella DNA out of these bones. Nobody can. What exists is a pattern of holes and the judgment of two people about what makes that pattern. It is a good reading. It is not a result. Brucellosis has not gone anywhere. It is still the most common disease that moves from animals to people, and it still gets in the same two ways it always did. The milk somebody did not heat, the animal somebody opened up. It still goes for the spine. Which means the word on the back of that label is not there because of anything modern. It is there because of something that has been getting into people for as long as people have been butchering animals, and possibly since a long time before there were people at all. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are just ancient. Do you eat anything raw or unpasteurized? Tell me below. Subscribe for more of the ancient reasons behind your modern life.